Based on the traditional Japanese martial arts, Aikido is a way to develop yourself, both physically and spiritually, through consistent training. It is not a combative sport where you compete or fight against opponents, but rather a means to build and strengthen oneself. Aikido trains your body for spiritual achievements and your mind for physical achievements. Aikido techniques can be divided into three categories: Katame waza, or locking and pinning techniques, Nage waza, or throwing techniques, and Buki waza, or techniques involving the use of weapons. Today we will demonstrate various Katame waza forms that can be used after you throw, drop, or strike your opponent. There are a variety of different Katame waza forms, but the majority are based on Ude Osai, or arm lock technique. For Katame waza, you will always pin your opponent face down by taking control of his arm, wrist, elbow, or shoulder. You will also be able to maintain absolute control by adjusting your stance, as well as the distance between you and your opponent. Of the 5 basic Katame waza forms, we will first introduce Ikkyo Ude Osai and Nikkyo Kote Mawashi. Because many other Katame waza are based on Ude Osai, it is important to begin with this technique. When your opponent attempts to strike you with his right hand, slide your right foot a half step forward and form hand blades to take control of his arm. Then, move your right knee forward in a Hanmi Ilimi form and proceed to pin him face down using his arm.
相手が打ってきたとき、右手で受けるのではなく、素早く相手の肘を左手で制することが大切です。
For Ura waza, or rear technique, pivot behind your opponent after you take control of his arm. Break his balance by using his controlled arm while turning your body and pin him face down. When your opponent strikes at you with his right hand blade, let your body follow as you cut down along his front as you pivot. Then take control of his right wrist with your right hand blade and his right elbow with your left. Break his balance by stepping in and pinning him from a seated position using his right arm. When your opponent attempts to strike at the side of your face with his right hand blades, block his attack by thrusting hand blades to his right arm and face. Take control of his right wrist by forming a cross with your hand blades and his right elbow with your right hand, and then pivot. Break his balance by turning, controlling his right arm, and pin him face down from a seated position. When your opponent grabs your left shoulder with his right hand, immediately strike at his face with your right hand. Break his balance by pivoting while you control his right arm with your right hand blade. Next, grab the back of his right hand and twist your hip to the right as you step with your left foot. Take control of his right elbow with your left hand blade, pivot, and pin him. For ula waza, break his balance before you take control of his right elbow with your left hand and shift your left foot toward his right after you grab the back of his right hand. Pivot to the right of your left foot, take full control of his right arm, and pin him. When your opponent grabs your wrist from behind, first turn your palms up and press them to your hips. Slightly shift your left foot back and swing your hands upward in a spiral motion, leading his hands along. Take a big step backwards with your right foot and break his balance as you swing your hands down in an arc. Take control of his left hand with your left hand and his left elbow with your right hand. Take a step forward with your right foot, then with your left, and finally pin him face down using his controlled arm. For ula waza, pivot widely leftward and control his arm. Pin him down from a seated position after taking control of his elbow and breaking his balance. This concludes our Ikkyo Ude Osai demonstration. Ude Osai, as was mentioned previously, is one of the most important basic techniques. Your ki, or spirit, ilimi, and your body sabaki must be integrated into this technique. Continue to practice it repeatedly until you feel confident and comfortable with the movements. The kote mawashi technique of Aikido applies pressure to the wrist of your opponent. Basically, it is a combination of the Ude Osai technique and a joint lock. When your opponent strikes at you with his right hand, first break his balance with the Ude Osai technique. Then pin his right shoulder at the base of his neck with your right knee as you apply pressure to his ribs with your left knee. Move in on your knees as you grab his right wrist inside your elbow. Take control of his right elbow with your right hand blade and twist his arm in the direction of his head.
この技では肘を制し、手首をしっかりと返し、うつ伏せに制することが大切です。
For ula waza, break your opponent's balance the same way as in the ula form of Ude Osai. Lock his right wrist with your right hand and control his right elbow with your left hand. Pivot toward the right while balancing on your left knee, then take his arm and pin him down. When your opponent grabs your left wrist with his right hand, form a Gyaku Hanmi stance, break his balance by first cutting your right hand below his right hand, and then bring it up in an arc as you use your left hand blade to control his right elbow. Twist his right hand in, move forward with your knees pressing against his body, and pin him down. For Urawaza, start from a Gyaku Hanmi stance. Form a hand blade as you twist your left wrist clockwise and swing it down. After he loses his balance, lock his wrist with your right hand and control his right elbow with your left hand. Finally, make a wide pivot to the right and pin him. When your opponent grabs your right shoulder, break his balance by forcing his left arm down with your left hand blade. Take control of his left arm joint and move it to the side as you pivot. Maintain control of his left arm in order to pin him face down from a seated position. When your opponent grabs your left shoulder with his right hand, use sabaki to break his balance. Pivot, grab his right wrist, and lock it using both hands. Pivot again and pin him face down. When your opponent grasps your left forearm using both hands, swing your left hand blade upward to the left. Step in forward to his right a little with your left foot, and use your body weight and hand blades to control him. Take control of his left elbow with your right hand blade and his left wrist with your left. Step in to break his balance and pin him. As you raise your hand blade in a spiral motion, step in with your left foot. Then, tenkan, as you grab your opponent's wrist and use both hands to lock it. This technique also has variations like the following. We have now concluded our demonstration of some basic forms, Ikkyo Ude Osai and Nikkyo Kote Mawashi. Remember that these techniques can be adapted to the opponent's moves and the current situation. Consequently, there are many possible variations. However, needless to say, it is important to master these basics before moving on to the variations or trying more advanced techniques. Continue practicing the forms we have demonstrated today until you feel confident and comfortable with them.